So yeah, I think again, the understanding of the issues that Hindus face around the world is an important aspect for all Hindus to pay attention to, because it will eventually come to bite us if we don't pay attention. The Hindu phobia in Canada has been again being it's being documented, and news reports have come out now, because right now with the farmers' protests, a lot of things were going on. It was not just just simple just negative press or anything. There were people being abused while shopping, at grocery stores and things like that. So if we are not active and awake Hindus, we will face the consequences at some point. So thank you for joining us on this journey to understand the history of the Hindu persecution, the current persecution that is ongoing in Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Afghanistan. And also, now we turn our focus to Sri Lanka. So the genocide in Sri Lanka and the ethnic cleansing that is going on there, since many years, for me, it was a big revelation to see this project. And when you see it, I think you will. First of all, I was shocked to hear how Buddhists and Hindus are fighting, because we have been such syncretic faiths in a long, long time. Idols of Buddha, Ganesh, all coexist. I have been all over Asia, and I've seen, Chinese goddesses and gods and Buddha on the same temple, and also Buddhist and so Hindu gods. So we've never had those issues, but in Sri Lanka, and famously, may I add that when Adi Shankaracharya converted so many Buddhists back into Hinduism, how did he do it? He did it by debate. That is the sort of culture we come from, very erudite, very scholarly. So, Mandan Mishra famously converted back, and all his congregation of Buddhists converted back into Hinduism, because they just said, yes, you won the debate. So that's the sort of culture we come from. But unfortunately, in Sri Lanka, what's going on is a very political battle, and it has been instigated, and you will find out when you see this presentation. Very interesting presentation. Over to you, Mr. Ravi. Thank you.
Before we start, here's the big picture of the global scenario today. Can you decipher what this map represents? You have a bunch of countries in color and the rest of the world in gray. Can you guess what this map? Can you decipher this map? Well, to cut the answer short, this is a map of all the countries in the world today where the dominant religion is not Islam or Christianity. What you see in color on the right in Asia is pretty much the only area left in the world where the dominant religion is not Islam or Christianity. The rest of the world, all the gray countries, are all where Abrahamic religions predominate. So we're going to look closely at the Asia region and specifically at one sub-region. So can you explain what this map represents? I know what you're thinking, but can you put it in plain English? Well, this map here represents the traditional Hindu homelands in Asia, where Hindu civilizations flourished across millennia, but are now under threat of extinction due to hostile belief systems. And our focus today will be on a much ignored, misunderstood, battle scarred Hindu homeland, the strategic and sacred island of Sri Lanka. I say strategic because it is Bharat's southernmost frontier. It is, in fact, Bharat's southern border. We are only concerned at this time with Bharat's northern border or Bharat's western border with hostile countries, even to some extent to the east of Bharat as well. We forget that Bharat is a border to the south. It's a marine border, maritime border. But this island is very strategic. And as Swami Vivekananda said, India is incomplete without Ceylon, or Bharat is incomplete without Sri Lanka. spiritually in a sacred manner, and we'll find out why. So we're going to go quickly through the past, present, and future of Hindu civilization in Sri Lanka. The map here shows how there is an umbilical cord of the Ram Setu connecting what is today's Sri Lanka with what is today's Bharat. So why is Sri Lanka a sacred holy land for Hindus? One, because it has more than 5,000 years of unbroken Hindu civilization with so many sacred Hindu relics and ancient devalayas that date back to the Ramayana era. And where Bhagwan Ram and Sita set foot, where Hanumanji set foot, it has to be a sacred land for us, for all Hindus. And this is the land of the Ram Setu, which is accurately described in the Ramayana and scientifically proven in the court system, as well as was featured prominently by the Discovery Science Channel. The Ram Setu is the umbilical cord that connects Bharat with the island of Sri Lanka, and there's a lot of details and evidence on it. And why is Sri Lanka again a holy land for Hindus? Because that's where you can find Ashok Vatika. The picture to the left here shows Ashok Vatika, where Ma Sita lived in Ravan's captivity, and the footprint there is that of Hanumanji. It's marked in yellow, gigantic footprints on the rocks where Hanumanji landed in Ashok Vatika. So these have left marks, and also. Sri Lanka is home to a very ancient Shakti Peeth called the Nagabhushani Devi temple. The Nagabhushani temple is in Jaffna. It's on an island, and there's also several ancient Ganesha temples in Jaffna and Batticaloa. Uh, the island of Sri Lanka is home to the five ancient Shiva mandirs called the Pancha Ishwaram temples, set up all over in the north, south, east, west, and center of Sri Lanka. And there's ancient mandirs in Sri Lanka dedicated to Bhagwan Kartikeya in Nallur and Kattaragrama, where he flew straight vertically down from Mount Kailash in the Himalayas. He moved to Sri Lanka in one straight line. It is found on the same straight line, which is under 81-degree uh, longitude. And there's, of course, ancient Vishnu Devalayas in Vallipuram and in Devinuvara. Just a quick, brief update on why Sri Lanka is a holy land for Hindus as much as the rest of Bharat is, or Nepal is. Sri Lanka has always been a part of ancient Hindu civilizations. Both the Chola and the Pandya kingdoms had Sri Lanka as part of its civilization from 3rd to the 13th centuries, which is more than 1,000 years of Chola and Pandya kingdoms. Sri Lanka, as you can see in the map, it was Chola territory. It was well represented in the Hindu civilization, and it had a lot of Hindu dynasties as well. It had Hindu dynasties in the northern Jaffna kingdom. It had Hindu chieftains or kings in the north central Vanni region. It had Hindu kings who actually ruled over what is today's Kandi, Sitavaka, and Kotte kingdoms, which were actually Buddhist majority, but many of the kings were Hindu. So all this continued very smoothly until the brutal European Christian invasions from the 16th to the 18th century, which is when all the Hindu kings and the Buddhist kings uh, were forced to surrender or were killed fighting the invaders. And a few historical facts about Sri Lanka. Hindu Dharma is the oldest among all the four major religions in Sri Lanka today. Sri Lanka had a flourishing Hindu indigenous civilization with a 100% Hindu population until the 2nd century BC. And what happened then was Emperor Ashoka's son Mahinda led Buddhist missionaries who arrived in 246 BCE in Sri Lanka to convert the local Hindus, and he did find some success. Lord Buddha himself is believed to have come to Sri Lanka uh, to preach the Dharma. And then, apart from that, Muslim traders were brought in by the British in the 19th century. Some even came from Indonesia to escape the Dutch. They were the ones who converted the local Hindu women and married them and set up sort of the Islamic population today. And then the Catholic missionaries arrived in the 16th century, along with the Portuguese invaders who led the Inquisition, a very violent, mandir burning Hindu butchering episode starting from the 16th century. And then Protestant Christian missionaries led by the British and Dutch invaders arrived in Sri Lanka in the 17th and 18th centuries to, to invade and control uh, the riches of Sri Lanka. So, um, Sri Lanka today, statistics wise, they say demography is destiny. 100 years ago, in 1901, there was census under the British rule, and in the 1901 census, and the Hindus were approximately 25% of the population of Sri Lanka. 25%, one in four. But today, in 2021, barely 120 years later, we find that the population of Hindus has decreased from 25% to 12.5%. And this is an extrapolation from the previous census that happened in 2012. But when you notice that the Hindu population has halved from 25 to 12.5%, the Buddhist population remains very steady. It's still at 70% of the population, but the Islamic population and the Christian population have grown rapidly. The Islamic population today is believed to be around 10%, and the Christian population is believed to be about 7.5%. Both these Abrahamic religions have grown by conversions of the Hindus and to some extent the Buddhists. So today's population overall in Sri Lanka, the total population is about 21 million, of which about 2.6 million are Hindus, which is about 26 lakh Hindus live in Sri Lanka today. Unfortunately, in the brutal civil war that happened, about 3 lakh Hindus were killed. This happened in the years 1983 to 2009. About 3 lakh Hindus were killed or they disappeared. Their bodies were never found. They're believed to have died. And unfortunately, that led to a drastic drop in the population. Also, Sri Lanka deported, several lakh Hindus, to India, claiming that they're actually not Indian. They're not actually Sri Lankan citizens, so they're actually in Tamil Nadu. And then also war refugees. More than 11 lakh Hindus have permanently fled Sri Lanka as war refugees during the civil war time, and they've settled in refugee camps in India. Some have migrated to Canada, some are in Australia, many are in the UK and France and Norway and other European countries. So that's a big drop in population, as you can see. And as you know, there's when there's civil war, there's always uh, war widows and war survivors, orphans. So there's about a 1 lakh Hindu war widow population whose primary breadwinners or husbands were killed in the war, and there's about 2 lakh war orphan children in Sri Lanka whose parents died in the civil war, and these are prime targets for conversions. Both Christian and Muslim groups are trying to convert them because these are very vulnerable groups. Okay, so this is where these are maps showing where is the predominant Hindu population, where is the predominant Buddhist population and Muslim population and Christian population. As you can see on the map to the left, the top left, the orange color shows where the districts where Hindus are still in large numbers. This is mostly in the northern, eastern, and central provinces. Each of them represents a district. Each number there represents the districts. So you can see that the northern province comprising Jaffna, Kilinochchi, Vavuniya, Mannar, and Mullaitivu have high populations of Hindus, and so does the eastern province comprising Batticaloa, Trincomalee, and Amparai. And likewise, the central province, where the tea gardens are, which is famous for its hill stations and tea exports, that Nuvara Ilia area also has a large number of Hindus, which are significant. The other districts do also have Hindus, but in slightly smaller numbers. But the Buddhist population is more or less centered in the central and southern parts of Sri Lanka. The Christian population is mostly on the north and western coast, which is where the Portuguese landed and converted. So you can see there's a big population of Christians in what is today's Mannar, in Puttalam, Negumbo, all on the west coast of Sri Lanka. And the Muslim population, those are the Christian population areas, and the Muslim population areas are pretty much on the east coast of Sri Lanka, which is traditionally the Hindu areas, but now in Batticaloa, Trincomalee, and in Amparai, you have lots of growth in the Muslim population, as well as on the left side you see Puttalam and Mannar, which are now marked in green. So Hindu population is decreasing, Muslim population is growing in these areas. So this is just to give you a feel for where the demographics lie. So what happened in the civil war was that, unfortunately, Sri Lanka is a place where there was outright massacres of Hindu civilians, and unfortunately, the problem in Sri Lanka is that there were two fighting sides that were instigated by two other groups. The Hindus and the Buddhists were instigated to fight each other by the Christians and aided by the Muslims. So the Christian politicians who belong to the Sinhalese linguistic community, they instituted a lot of repressive measures against the Tamil population, who are mostly Hindu, but the Christian Catholic priests and intellectuals instigated the Hindu Tamils to become cannon fodder to fight against this oppression linguistically, and the civil war erupted. This has gone on for more than 3 decades, and it finally stopped in 2009. And in this, the Muslims joined up on the side of the government and killed a lot of Tamils. So you see that the army was predominantly Buddhist, the LTT was predominantly Christian instigated, and the paramilitary guards were Muslims. And ultimately, all the victims, most of the victims that were killed in the civil war in the civilians were either Hindus or Buddhists, and a lot of bitterness has resulted because of the attacks on uh, the the Hindu temples and Buddhist temples by both sides, and Hindus have become scapegoats. And who has benefited the most? It is the Christians and Muslims because their numbers have grown and the Hindu population has dropped. And some pictures here are horrific. I apologize for the graphic images, but these are just a small image of what happened in the horrific civil war. Many of the 3 lakh Hindu civilians were never found. Their bodies are believed to have been either buried in unmarked graves or dumped in the ocean by the combatants. So, with the war, civil war ending in 2009, another phase of attacks on Hindus have started, which is the predatory conversions and love jihad. Uh, in Sri Lanka today, there are 1,525 NGOs that receive funds from Western churches and Islamic countries for converting the Hindus primarily, and to some small extent the Buddhists. The Buddhists are very strong because the government of Sri Lanka supports the Buddhists. Officially, Sri Lanka has a preferential treatment for Buddhists. But so the Hindus have become orphans in every sense. So we have war affected Hindu refugees, lakhs and lakhs of them, who have PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, but they have no counseling. They have no psychological counseling, and they have no support structure because their breadwinners, their husbands, their sons have all died in the war, and so there's you know over 1 lakh war widows and 2 lakh children who don't have either a father or a mother or both, and these are prime targets for conversions. Just to give you an example, in the eastern province alone, the government of Sri Lanka's survey reported that more than 65,000 Hindu war widows or orphaned girls have been converted to Islam and married off to Muslim women just in the last 5 years. 2014 to 2019 was when it was done in the eastern province alone. And imagine extrapolating this data to other provinces. There's 9 provinces in Sri Lanka. So what has happened is Muslim businessmen own factories and shops. They own textile garment factories, where they own a lot of the businesses in Sri Lanka are owned by Muslims, wealthy ones. So they hire Hindu war widows to work in these shops or work in these garment stitching factories. They hire Hindu girls who are orphaned, and then they have been pressurized and married off to Muslim men. And there exists in Sri Lanka a very strong nexus between the Pakistani ISI, drug smugglers, and jihadis who have been involved in India as well, especially in the 2014 Chennai train blast. The Pakistani ISI operates through the Pakistani High Commission, the Pakistani Embassy in Colombo. There is a Pakistani officer stationed there from the ISI, called Amir Siddiqui, and he has worked extensively, and he's been there for many, many years now. And there's been a lot of support from him to Islamic groups in Sri Lanka to pick up arms and fight. And they raise money locally by smuggling drugs between the open coast of Tamil Nadu and the coast of Sri Lanka, which is unguarded pretty much, except for a few navy ships here and there. So this is a very scary and it's a developing nexus. And the most recent evidence we saw was in 2019 during the Easter attacks. What happened in Easter attacks was that one of the suicide bombers, one of the was a radical Muslim convert called Sarah, but she was born a Hindu. Her name was Pulastini Mahendran, and this very well-educated Hindu college student. You see pictures on the left. This girl was very confident, very uh, sincere in her studies, very good at what she was doing. Unfortunately, her father was dead, raised by a single mother. So she came under the influence of her classmate, a man named Muhammad, who's actually shown in the third picture here. So she got brainwashed, got converted to Islam, was so scared of him that she followed him in his final mission. And what this couple, along with their fellow jihadis, did was they first got trained. There were Islamic terror groups in Tamil Nadu and Kerala who trained these jihadi terrorists from Sri Lanka, and this whole attack in 2019 Easter happened. Unfortunately, where a lot of these young suicide bombers blew themselves up along with innocent people in different hotels and churches in Sri Lanka, and more than 260 people died, and more than 500 people were injured. So you can see the natural regression of the girl from a free-spirited Hindu girl on the left to a hijabi jihadi suicide bomber to the right. And this is not all. While on the one hand, Islamic groups have been carrying out love jihad, the Christian groups have been carrying out attacks and desecrations of Hindu temples, Hindu mandirs. Hindu devalayas in different parts of Sri Lanka have come under attack, mostly by the Christian missionaries. Muslims have also done it, but it's the Christian missionaries who are at the forefront of uh, destroying, defiling, desecrating Hindu temples, smashing the murtis of Ganesh ji, and throwing out the murtis from the mandir, and so on and so forth. So, and a third problem, aside from the jihadis and the Christian missionaries' attacks, is that there is also a rampant, uh, ongoing Buddhist usurpation or capturing by of the Hindu devalayas by some very fanatic Buddhist monks. So wherever there's a Hindu temple, you see Buddhist monks coming in trying to put a big statue of Buddha in the middle of the temple grounds or inside the temple, and threatening Hindu priests, as you can see in the picture to the right. Threatening Hindu women trustees, as you can see in the picture at the bottom. And at the bottom left, you see a picture of where Ganeshji's murti was taken away from a Hindu temple and forcibly kept in a Buddhist temple. Because in Sri Lanka, Buddhists worship the same deities, the same devis and devatas that we Hindus worship. So there is no difference, culturally speaking, in terms of values. The Buddhist population in Sri Lanka also worships the same Ganeshji, Shiva, Parvati, Durga, in Kartikeya, and all the deities that the Hindus worship. They also extra worship Buddha. They worship Buddha for Bodhana, and Hindu Devi Devatas for sadhana. So, but the problem is these Buddhist monks come in, snatch the murti of Ganeshji, take it to the Buddhist temple, and now the Hindus had to bring in a different murti and consecrate that. And so this constant irritation. Oh, I'm going to put a Buddha statue in your temple. I'm going to put a Buddha murti in your temple grounds, in your temple chariot procession path. So that is constantly happening, unfortunately. And these are instigated. There is clear evidence that the Bodhu Bala Sena, which is the Buddhist monks militant group today, is actually funded discreetly by the ISI. There's a lot of research on it that shows that the Pakistani High Commission has been donating money to this Buddhist organization to instigate trouble against the local Hindu population, as well as carry out sort of hostilities between the Buddhists and Muslims as well. So overall, the communal tensions rise, and more Muslims fall to their bait of radicalization. So that being said, the Hindus have also reacted in a very positive way, and this has been ongoing since 2016. Um, Several Hindus have gotten together and formed an NGO called the Shiva Senai, or the Shiva Sena, which is nothing to do with any organizations in India of the same name. But the Shiva Senai is an intellectual, social, religious uh, NGO that has worked very hard since 2016 to stop conversions and to bolster the Hindu mindset. So the Shiva Sena was founded by a former UN official called Dr. Sachidanandan, and he has essentially set up a team of activists and volunteers all over the country, and they have stopped potentially thousands of conversions of poor Hindu families. They've been foiled. The missionaries have been, driven out. Quite a few Garvapasis have also been converted. Reconversion ceremonies of the Christians back to their ancestral Hindu dharma has also been converted, has been also been performed. And Shiva Sena works closely with all Hindu organizations. They are not sectarian in any way, and they've also pushing the Sri Lankan government and parliamentarians for enacting stricter anti-conversion laws. So, what is also one more point is that Mannar district, which used to be Hindu majority, but since the Portuguese invasion has become Christian majority, is now facing a rampant conversion. So Shiva Sena has identified 6,000 poor Hindu families in Mannar who are under immediate threat of conversion. And Shiva Sena is helping to provide each of these 6,000 Hindu families with spiritual Hindu support, visible Hindu symbols on their houses, such as the Hindu flag, the saffron, Nandi Dhwaj, and then providing them tulsi plants, providing them Hindu scriptures, because none of them have any Hindu scriptures in the houses. And they're also training Hindu priests in every village. There are about 9,000 villages where there's no Hindu priest. So Christian priests try to take over the role of the dominant uh, funeral performer. If there's any death in the family anywhere, the Christian priest comes in and says, okay, there's no Hindu priest here. Let me do your last rites of the dead Hindu person according to Christian traditions. So what we're trying to do is they're trying to train Hindu priests from all jatis, all the castes, whoever's interested, and also provide Hindu priest training to Hindu women in every village. So it's a long process, 9,000 villages. You have to identify and train the right people. So it's ongoing. And then Shiva Sena is building Shivalingam temples at every mile marker. And this is happening to counter the planting of crosses and the planting of Mary and Jesus statues along the highways in Hindu districts in the northern province. In places like Mannar and in Jaffna and in the Vanni districts, you see a lot of, infant Jesus and Mary and Jesus and crosses coming up, little statues along the highway where people stop to pray. So we're building Shivalingam temples at every mile marker, every once in every few miles along the highways to counter that. And one big success that the Shiva Sena has had last year or the last few years has been that the Shiva Sena waged a successful legal and satyagraha campaign, a hunger strike to stop cow slaughter, cattle slaughter in the northern Jaffna district. The picture on the left shows Hindu leaders led by Dr. Sachidanandan bringing together other Hindu monks and Buddhist monks to do the hunger strike. And this was first in the Jaffna district alone, and then it spread to 7 city councils all over Sri Lanka. And then finally, last year in 2020, the Sri Lankan government respected this Hindu Buddhist joint campaign and banned cow slaughter. Legally, cow slaughter is banned in Sri Lanka with the parliament and the cabinet approving this. However, it has not been implemented yet. So it has been banned officially, but due to a lot of pressure from the Islamic and Christian groups, the Sri Lankan government has not implemented the ban. We're going to push them to see if this can be done as soon as possible. So these are pictures of Shiva Sena activities, the resistance work that's going on, the Hindu resistance to stop conversions in a peaceful manner. And Sri Lankan Hindu society is a very active, very passionate society. They are not laid back, they are not lethargic. They are always willing to stand up for themselves. They are poor, they are war weary, they are very traumatized by the civil war, but still you can see the fighting spirit. On the left is where they did a mass human chain to press for immediate ban on cow slaughter, which paid dividends. On the right, on the top right, you see a procession of more than 2,500 Hindu activists who marched in the streets of Vavunia in 2020, pressing for, among other things, the cow slaughter ban, anti-conversion laws. It brought together all the Hindu temples and all the Hindu organizations participated, and Shiva Sena played the role of glue, bringing all of them together. It brought everybody together silently. And the pictures on the center left show women being trained as priests in the Hindu scriptures and how to do pujas. It's being they're being women Hindu women are being taught to become Hindu priests in different villages. And then the picture to the center right is where Shiva Sena uh, activists led by Sachidanandji went and distributed relief to Hindu families who were attacked by Muslim thugs on Mahashivratri day in Anuradhapura inside the temple. So they were hacked, and you can see the person on the left wearing a surgical mask on his head because he was hacked on his head. But this family received financial support, and we bolstered them, their faith, and the temple behind them is where, which was and the painted in red stripes, was where they were attacked. So now the bottom two pictures show the Garvapasi happening. The bottom left and the bottom right pictures are all the Christian families in Chidambarapuram village who had been converted, but they were reconverted back to Hindu Dharma. More than 11 families were reconverted back, and you can see the Gharvapasi ceremony happening. And this was done by Shiva Sena's efforts. So recently in 2021, which is this year, in January, February, Shiva Sena planned and carried out a very innovative nationwide awareness campaign against conversions on the occasion of Swami Vivekananda's 158th birth anniversary. And more than 5,000 posters were prominently pasted in 16 districts out of 25 in Sri Lanka. In 16 districts, in many villages and towns and cities in public places, the poster on the left was pasted. This was a bilingual poster in Tamil and Sinhala languages, which featured Swami Vivekananda's very powerful quote against conversions. And it also urged the Sri Lankan government to pass the anti-conversion law without any delays. And one more success of Sri Lanka was that Shiva Sena had taken the help of the local police and stopped these rabid Christian missionaries from India, Mohan Lazarus and others from Tamil Nadu, from preaching in Jaffna and other Hindu areas. They were sent back with Shiva Sena's complaints to the Sri Lankan police. So these are successes, and there's also some ongoing work right now. More than 4,000 Hindu temples were destroyed during the civil war, ancient temples, by artillery shelling and bombing. So successful efforts are ongoing. This is just one effort. This temple in Maravan Pulavu village, which is the native village of Sachidanandji, the Ganesha temple there, which the picture on the left on the top shows the destroyed temple, and the one at the bottom shows the rebuilt temple after the civil war was over. So efforts are on in different villages by different organizations to rebuild Hindu temples. Otherwise, churches are coming up everywhere to compete with us. And then the positives about Sri Lanka is that this picture here is of Nallur. Nallur is in Jaffna, and this is the ancient temple of Kartikeya, also known as Skanda. So Nallur Kandaswamy temple. The Hindu masses bhakti in Sri Lanka, as you can see in this temple chariot festival, is immense. They will show up in large numbers, pull the chariot themselves, the rathas, and it has to be seen to be believed. The amount of bhakti and fervor there is for the Hindu dharma, and so that is one of the positives of Sri Lanka. And you can see that strong bhakti empowers lakhs of Hindu devotees who are, in this case, pulling the rath, the chariot of Kartikeya, at the Nallur Devalayam in Jaffna. This shows the inner strength of the Hindus. No matter how poor they are, they still believe in Hindu dharma. And uh, Hindu temples that were destroyed by the Portuguese were rebuilt. For example, this Hindu temple is in Trikonamalai or Trincomalee. It was a Shiv Mandir that was built during the Ramayana era, and Ravana used to worship here, but it was destroyed by the Portuguese Catholic invaders in the 16th, 17th century. But it was again rebuilt by the Hindus in the 18th century. So this is one of the most iconic temples on the east coast of Sri Lanka. So the Hindu revival started to happen right then. So all is not lost. There is immense potential to help in the protection, preservation, and propagation of Hindu Dharma in the Hindu holy land of Sri Lanka. So let us help by lighting a lamp. Let us help by following the footsteps of a great Hindu saint called Arumuga Navalar, who during the British era started the anti conversion movement in Sri Lanka. So the poor Hindus of Sri Lanka hold the Hindu traditions, the Hindu scriptures close to their chest. They may be poor, but they're very resilient. And they can hold on to the traditions if the global Hindu diaspora is including the diaspora Hindu, the Hindus in India, can empower the Sri Lankan Hindus and help them prevent conversions. So, with this appeal, I might just conclude asking everyone to look into helping Hindus in Sri Lanka. And I have given the contact of Shiva Sena founder in Sri Lanka, Dr. Sachidanandan. His email and phone number are provided here. Please do think about it. See how strategically important Sri Lanka is for Bharat in terms of security. So strategically, it is quite the vulnerable southern frontier of Bharat. If Sri Lanka stays Hindu Buddhist majority, then we will not have to face a threat in the future. China is already sniffing in Sri Lanka, trying to build a foothold. So Hindus have to be more active and not just limit themselves to present day political India, but also spread their vision and their benevolence to helping Hindus everywhere, especially in the traditional Hindu homeland of Sri Lanka, which is part of what is Akhand Bharat, what is the cultural Bharat. Dhanyavad, namaskar. On behalf of Dr. Sachidanand of Sri Lanka and the Siva Sena and all the Hindus of Sri Lanka, I would like to thank VSI 2021 for giving us this opportunity to present. And I would also like to wish VSI a lot of success in its current conference and in all future conferences. This is the way to build a, a dharmic world, and this is the way we're going to ennoble the world. Krunvanto Vishwamaryam. Thank you. Namaskar.
Thank you so much, Ravi ji. This was phenomenal. I think a lot of us have learned a lot about the Sri Lankan crisis.